Hello. Not many people will probably listen to this, but hello. My name is Wayne Holmes, and and I sort of slightly, got myself into movies a little bit. And the film I'm going to try and review to you today, I normally don't talk that much about disaster films, but I've over the years I've come across a disaster film that was released way back in 1980, and it was a different disaster film from pretty much all other disaster films, particularly at that time, in that it was a comedy. I'm talking about Flying High, or Airplane as it was known in America, Great Britain and some other countries. Does the film really need, an introduction? Anyway, it's about a passenger airline jet in jeopardy. The three pilots in the cockpit of the plane, they fall ill, unconscious, and fall ill, and it's up to one of the inexperienced passengers at flying, that is, to fly the plane. Now, I got to tell you, I've seen this movie dozens of times, and I actually got a copy of it on DVD here. They're Flying High and Flying High 2. I'll talk about Flying High 2 very briefly a little bit later. I must admit, though, I've yet to see any of the four airport movies that this movie sends up, but I've pretty much already got a love-hate, mostly love relationship with this Flying High film. I just think the comedy in it is it's just so thick and fast. The only what am I going to say? The only person that can deliver any faster comedy is Mel Brooks. There's just some really, really classy lines in this movie. There's one scene where one of the female passengers falls ill, and she gets some sort of illness that somehow, allows eggs to come out of her mouth. Leslie Nielsen says to one of the stewardess, "We've got to get this. We've got to land as soon as possible. This passenger has to be taken to a hospital," or something like that. And the stewardess says, "A hospital? What is it?" And Leslie Nielsen, who played the part of the doctor, said, "It's a big building with patients, but that's not important right now." There's a lot of those sort of lines in that film, and very politically incorrect. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in films that nowadays you never see in any comedies or any films, that is, at all. Things like, the conversation that Peter Graves, the pilot, has with the little boy. Things like, he says things like, what's one of the questions? Something like, do you watch gladiator movies? or have you? I think one of the other questions is, do you ever hang around a men's locker room or something like that? But the downside for me is, without having seen any of the four airport films that it sends up, I can't really take any of the four airport films, 100%, well, not literally, but 100% seriously, simply because it, this, or pretty much any disaster film for that matter, 100% seriously, simply because this film has sent them up and just tore them to shreds. And the Abraham Zucker comedy team, they produced and directed and wrote this film. They did a very good job in producing it and directing it. There are sort of lewd and rude bits in it, but if you're kind of expecting it to be all out raunchy, forget about that. But if you're kind of expecting it to be totally offensive, well, it isn't totally offensive. It's only slightly offensive. So forget about that as well. And yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah. Anyway, yeah. About Flying High. There was a sequel released a couple of years later in 1982, Flying High 2, or Airplane 2, the sequel as it was known in some other countries. It was okay. It's worth checking out for any Flying High 1 fans, but it wasn't that good, and quite frankly, most of the jokes in it were pretty much copied from Flying High 1, and the Zucker Abrahams Zucker team, they had nothing at all to do with Flying High 2. Yes, I recently re-watched this movie, Flying High 1, with the Zucker Abrahams Zucker comedy team's audio commentary on DVD. An experience that I really recommend any lovers of the film Flying High 1 to see, because you pick up a few bits of information that you possibly never even knew about this film. Things like the budget for this film, Flying High 1, was only $3.5 million. That's, I mean, nowadays for a film that would barely be enough to cover the cost of, one actor. And yeah, things like Peter Graves' wife, I don't know if she's was an actor or not, but Peter Graves' wife actually liked the script. And what else is there? That's all that basically comes to my mind about the audio commentary in this for Flying High in this point of time. Yeah, it's I recommend if you see it at a DVD, Flying High 1 and or 2 at a DVD shop or online. I think there's a website that sells it in Australia here for about $15. Mate, for $15 for Flying High, you get $30 worth of laughs. And it's very wacky, and more importantly about a comedy like this, it's very politically incorrect. It takes. I don't think I've ever seen a comedy, before in my life that takes out a baseball bat and a cricket bat at the same time against all forms of political correctness. It's not sort of all out offensive, but I think by today's standards, it's dead set against political incorrectness. And even by 1980 standards, it was against political incorrectness. Yeah, it's and another thing about this film that I like, it was the first time that any of the lead actors, like Peter Graves, Leslie Nielsen, Lloyd Bridges, Robert Hayes, Robert Stack, and Julie Haggerty. It was Julie Haggerty's first film role. It was the first time these actors had ever played comedic roles before, at least in film, and probably first time in their lives, actually. Yes, that's pretty much, sorry about that, all that I've got to say, and, it's, I mean, that's pretty much all I've got to say. I hope someone out there at least was listening, and I'll review another movie sometime later. Bye for now.